to go back in time a couple of hours a day is really inspiring to hear how that room just kind of made this magic sound.
A lot of people are going to enjoy the magic of Sound City and what it can do to make your record sound like a hit record.
There was always a pile of stuff that was unmarked. And I think that's where some of the fun came for us as well. Here's a box from 1976 that doesn't say anything but Scotch 250, which was the branded tape, ready to be recorded on. So you figure use tape that maybe they were gonna use for some starving artist, so you just use the tape for free and record over the session that was previously on it. And I'm sitting with one now that drove me crazy for a good 6 months.
My relationship with James really gelled when we went down the rabbit hole of listening to archive material that we own and getting things from the late 60s and the 70s.
Once Wilma was running, you would just put on the mystery tapes and go, okay, we know it's the tape brand. That brand was only made from 75 to 78 and things went to Ampex. So you could use it, go, well, what kind of tape was it recorded on? You look at the box, well, that's obviously mid-70s, and then you play it. And in this case, a song I'd never heard, a song Sandy'd never heard, but just a brilliantly recorded and played song. It was an outtake that was just tossed. And through some detective work, you start listening to things and going, boy, that drummer sounds really familiar. That piano sounds great. And I'm gonna fast forward you a few months to where we figured out this session had David Foster on piano, Jeff Porcaro on drums, Mike Porcaro on bass, David Page on Rhodes, Jay Graydon guitar. These are the #1 session guys in LA in the 70s. Just doing another session in the afternoon for an unknown band.
Well, there's more to the magic of Sound City than just the room or just the console. As we all know, there's the brilliant people behind the console who used this compression or this Dolby trick, and since we've saved all this stuff in the archives, we're learning the tricks that were previously secret and previously lost to history, but we've really uncovered a lot of it.
What I was listening for was, how were the drums recorded? Let me listen to the overheads, let me listen to the room mics. But then those songs start catching in your head, and then the sonic quality of that. And then you start chasing these sort of things, and you realize this studio was open 7 days a week for decades. How many people came through here and got these amazing sounds that weren't just Fleetwood Mac. It was the band before them, the band after them. To go back in time a couple of hours a day is really inspiring to hear how that room just kind of made this magic sound. And the people behind the console and how they mic'd cellos and got the drums this way. I mean, we've discussed people coming here just for the kick drum sound. You can hear it. You can pick any tape and go, listen to that kick drum. You know, that room, that console, the way they knew how to dial in the EQ with that mic in that room became a whole recipe.
You know, we had been this last holdout of analog for so long. I mean, obviously we've been using Pro Tools for 20, 30 years or whatever, but, you know, really a dedicated analog and anti-anything, you know, digital or whatever. And so, you know, times change and you got to go with the flow. And if we do this thing where we capture the sound of the room, it'll be preserved forever. We definitely don't want the sound of Sound City Studio A to go away the way that some of these other rooms have been destroyed.
So UA has had the opportunity to capture some amazing spaces, some really iconic spaces used in the recordings that are the soundtracks of our lives. So when we had the opportunity to do Sound City, we had a lot of experience, and we've learned a lot with each one of these about what works and what doesn't work and how to do it. We wanted to make this even more special, to take it to the next level.
Someone argued that we're selling the sound of the room, and like, when people aren't gonna book it. Well, you know, it's only open so many hours in the day and days of the year. This plugin will make it so that the bands over in Sweden, death metal bands that want to come to Sound City can have this sound and put their drums through Studio A.
Well, Universal Audio has been doing plugins for a long time. That was one of the things when Bill Putnam Jr., refounded the company and came out. One of the things he wanted to do was do these physical models of these classic analog processors. And it's really what we've become known for, because we do it with amazing detail in terms of being able to get access to some of the best units ever made, the units used on these classic records, the pristine examples. And we don't just run a signal through it and capture it. We actually rip them apart, and we understand and measure every component. And we break down the entire circuit so we know how that circuit lives and breathes through the entire range of controls, right? From min to max on every control. And then we build these physical models that recreate that in a plug-in.
It's really going the extra route to go, well, it's not just the console, it's knowing like, well, you put the drums right here in this room. 20 feet from here with the baffle here, put the mic right here, go through the console, go to the tape machine, print it this hot, put a little bit of room mic on it. All the little ingredients that sort of becomes the magic, because those are things you only would have learned if you got to come here and be an assistant and be the tape op, and then maybe you work up to assistant engineer. So to be able to go back through the old Rolodex here and call engineers that were here during a period where Stephanie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham were unknowns, and telling me, oh, this is where we used to put the drums. Or calling somebody else and go, hey, when they did Dio, where were the drums? Well, we were on the other side of the room because the drummer hated the producer. He didn't want to look at his face through the glass. So they actually turned the room around, and the guitars were in the piano corner and the drums were on the opposite side of the room. And you start to decipher the history of that room. And it's just a daily, just sort of, there's all these little discoveries that nobody knows that we're starting to find out. And you tack a year of that research work in, and we're still going through stuff and are able to take some of those little magic gems of going, well, you put the drums here, maybe you take the toms and put a Keepex gate on it, and then let it trigger a plate reverb. I know exactly the decay time of the plate reverb. I know the gate settings. I know exactly how it was printed to the tape, what the mics were. So that level is basically like just getting to sit there and be in these sessions again. And it's really inspiring to hear these great players playing in a room. You hear the drums bleeding into the piano. You hear the B3 bleeding into the kick mic. And it really just brings you back to what great musicians in a room can do. And hopefully you'll be able to open up a session of your own one of these days and just pull up a little preset that I know I'm putting you in the drum corner Tom Petty liked. Because I was able to reference a safety copy from 1981 where I know where he put the mics and exactly what that room mic sounded like.
This gave us that opportunity to create this plugin that was not only just the sound of the room, but the entire sound of Sound City, that was combining the sound of the console, of the effects processors, of the Dolby units and the creative ways they were using, getting access to all the documentations and the tapes and how these records were made so that we could recreate the sound of that and compare it back to the original, so you would be able to get the sound of Sound City in your home studio.
So I just got done recording a song here in my home office, and the reason I was doing this is because I was talking to the Universal Audio guys, and they were telling me about this plugin that I can record a song in my own home and then have it sound like I'm recording in the legendary studio Sound City, which is really awesome, and it's gonna be great.
I'm here at Marne's house. She's an amazing musician, and she's graciously offered to write and record a song to show off the Sound City plugin. So I brought a truckload of gear, and we set up here in her office space. She had a song idea. She broke out an acoustic guitar, kind of played the song, get an idea of what we were working with. So it's like, okay, let's record that acoustic guitar part. The first thing we wanted to do was find a nice loop. We used Easy Drummer, found a drum loop that kind of was the right tempo and kind of suited the song. We used that in lieu of a metronome and just set that up. So then we decided to do a scratch vocal. So we had a UAD1 microphone, did a quick scratch vocal, make sure the song structure was the way we wanted, kind of got everything laid out exactly the way she envisioned it. and had kind of something to work from. From there we thought, let's add some electric guitar parts, because we wanted, when that first part kicks in, have some really heavy guitars. The first guitar was a Strat. She got her Strat, we plugged it into a Red Llama pedal, and the Red Llama pedal into my 65 Deluxe Reverb amp. Took the out of the amp into an aux amp top box. And from there we did something kind of unique. One side of it we went through a cabinet and recorded into Luna. The other side, we took DI out and recorded that into a second track. So then again, we wanted to double the guitar track, so we had an Ibanez semi-hollow body, really good sounding guitar. Took the output of that into a Lion pedal. The Lion pedal found a nice tone, took the out of that into the aux stomp pedal, and again did the same thing. One side was through a cabinet, the other side was DI out. And the whole point of this was to get the DI'd guitar recorded so you could use the recabbing feature in the Sound City plugin. So we wanted to layer in a second guitar part, so she broke out a Taylor acoustic guitar. Again, recorded it straight into an Apollo, stock preamps, nothing complex. So for vocals, we wanted to use the UA SC1 microphone. So we did a main vocal, set it up, recorded that again straight into an Apollo stock preamps. And then once that was done, she had a bunch of ideas for different harmony vocals, ad-libs, things like that she wanted to layer in. So we kind of kept the tape rolling, walked through and just recorded, high parts, low parts, different ad-lib parts, and just kind of spread those off, across 4 or 5 different tracks, and got a bunch of different stuff. Went back, did a few punch-ins to kind of, nail a few parts, and all of a sudden we had a song together. So all that's left is to get real drums. So we're very fortunate to be able to work with Nick DiVirgilio, an amazing drummer. And we brought these tracks to his home studio where he could lay down the drum parts.
Universal Audio approached me about the idea of cutting a track for this new Sound City plugin, and I said yes right away, because Sound City is an iconic place, and to work with UA and the ability to kind of learn more about Sound City was very appealing to me. So I got together with Marnay, and she wrote a song, a nice little rock and roll number, and she cut some vocals and guitar and then sent me over those tracks. And I got here in my studio and I laid down some drums and some bass. Recording the drums and the bass here in my studio, I record everything through UA Apollos. I have an X8P, an 8P, and a X4, so those 3 together give me plenty of channels. All goes into Pro Tools. I have my DW Maple Mahogany kit, Sabian cymbals, and a bunch of different microphones, from the Neumann FET 47 and the Beta 52, classic mic combination on the kick, 57s on the snare drum, always classic there. I have KSM 32s for my overheads right now. Those change out depending on what I'm working on. Got some great biodynamic mics for the toms.
Should talk about is the point of what we did, right? We used the UA standard series microphones, which are great sounding microphones, but we used stock preamps, and we didn't do anything too extravagant, because the whole point was to show off that we could record in this office space, but then with the Sound City plugin, make it sound as if it were actually tracked in this legendary room.
So with the recording process, it was super easy, it was a lot of fun, and I am super excited to hear how it's going to sound with the plugin.
All right, hey guys, you want to listen to the tracks that we recorded?
Oh yeah.
Yes, please.
All right, let's start with drums. So here we have soloed up, we'll just listen to the dry drums. All right, so you kind of hear Sound City, doing some stuff here. Let's take a look at what's going on in here. So first is you have some different microphones. So we're in remic mode, which replaces your mics with the Sound City, microphones. It's the whole mics room and everything. So you got a couple different choices. So we could audition close mics. So for example, we have a C414, a C12, 77DX ribbon mic, and let's just kind of hear them. So they all obviously have very different, sounds about them. We can also drag them around in the room. So like that, ribbon mic, I can pull it around. Or if I go to the C12, you have options for both cardioid and omni, and you can kind of move the mics and get the sound you want. Or with the 414s, you've got a pair of them here, and you can raise and lower them. You can also add room mics. So in this example here also, I have a pair of U67s that are back in the room. And again, they can be cardioid or omni. And I could just move these around in the room as well and dial in a sound. So. So it just kind of opens it up.
Sure, it's subtle, but it's cool. When they make a plugin like this, they're sampling the room and getting all these sounds together. How on earth do they sample a microphone at the back of the room, and then when you move the mics, the sound really changes as you're dragging the microphones towards the drum kit and back. You can hear the middle ground and when it gets close and then back.
We use physical modeling to actually simulate the sound of the microphones all over, different types of microphones in various places, some of which is based on historical usage, and some of which is just allowing you to kind of find your own sweet spots. So another thing we have is presets. So we can call up presets that are, different, room techniques or things that are done. So if I were to go here, click on the little preset thing, click on it here, and I could just select drums, and it'll bring up all my drum presets. So let's call it Big Rock Drum Room. Here we go. Pretty big.
It brings it out a lot.
What we're looking at here is the drums against the back wall. We've got gobos all around the drums, and this is the way Fleetwood Mac made records in the 70s. This is the setup that they generally used. If we go to another preset here, it's full kit on a send corner, and this is in the drums on the opposite end in what they call the wood corner, because you've got the little wood here, and you see there's the door into the control room, there's the glass, through into the control room. And this is how Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers made records. So you'll see the drums back here, you see the gobos out here, and the band would just set up in this area and make records. So let's take a listen to this. Now this is in reverb mode versus remic, which replaces your mics. Reverb is more of your traditional reverb. You send it and you kind of blend it into taste. So let's blend this in about 50-50. And you'll notice I'm just using the room mics here. So that's kind of that.
I dig that sound quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
It's so crazy too, because you just get transported to this room.
Right.
That is so cool.
Yeah, and so like you hear something like, I grew up as a Tom Petty fan, so you hear that, it's like it you
I know,
definitely
it brings
takes
it
you back
back
to your youth
Yeah.
of listening to these cassette tapes in your car as a child, So here is another one. It's full kit on a Send Gobo. So this is back to that Fleetwood Mac era, but in reverb mode. So again, let's just dial that back here a bit.
Just a different flavor.
Definitely different sound. Some of it's the placement of the room. Some of it is the gobos, deadening up, soaking up a little bit of the reflections of the room.
But you can really hear the differences.
Yeah, it's totally different.
Yeah, like what Nick said too. It's subtle, but it is there.
Yep. So this is a third one, and this is without the gobos against the back wall. This is the way Nirvana recorded their Nevermind. So this would have been the Dave Grohl drum setup, right? So back against the wall, piece of carpet. Again, it's in reverb mode, so we can kind of blend it in. Take a listen to that.
You're adding the room in, but it's adding some low end and some beef to the sound overall too, which is kind of cool.
And when I push that up a little bit, you get too much room, you start to hear it flamming off the side walls, and like you can hear the warts of the way if you record it in a room that you would get, and it starts to get that little flamming kind of sound effect. So let's take a look at some other stuff with drums, and I'm just going to go back to the original preset that we started with here, this one here. And then there's different effects. So we can have EQ. So this is the iconic 70s British console channel EQ that's here. There's also effects. In this case, we've got an 1176. So the idea is we can use the 1176 at a 20-to-1 ratio to just really squash the room. So we'll listen to it without it, and then. You've got basically the amount, how hard you're hitting it, a wet, dry. You can blend, parallel blend it in, how much of it you want to get. And there's a couple of different sidechain filter options, but you can use it to get that squashed room sound.
What's cool about it too is that's giving you a lot of control. And I think when you're at home and you're recording a lot of stuff, that's what you want.
Yeah.
Is you want to have as much control over the sound as possible. So when you get options like that, it's great to have and to give to the consumer.
I mean, in rooms like this with engineers, that was the process. People would experiment and move mics around. You've got this big space to work in, and then they would process some of those different ways. So we've tried to maintain a lot of things that we've learned were used on these records, because it's not just the room, it's the room and the people and the gear, and it's all of it together that contributes to the sound.
It's great.
Let's take a listen to the bass track. So just moving on here, I'm going to solo this up. You recorded bass just straight into an Apollo, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So one of the other tricks that we learned from folks that worked at Sound City is they would take tracks, whether it's bass, guitar, keyboards, whatever, pump them through speakers into the room, and then mic up the room and blend that back in. So this is kind of a cool example on bass. So that's a pair of UAD studio monitors here. And then I've just got like a C12 up close, and then I've got a pair of U67s back in the room. So we'll start with it off. So you can hear those, those room mics really add something to it, and you can kind of blend them out in, and it sets it out, and it just gives it its nice space in the bottom of the track.
It's so amazing, like how real it sounds. Like if I were to like close my eyes, I would just see this in this room. It just brings it all out and makes it really lively.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
the goal. Yeah. So let's try another example here. I'm going to move on to acoustic guitar. With acoustic guitar, there's actually a couple of different guitars, and I just have them going to a bus. And then I'm kind of doing a similar sort of thing. We're able to play with mics up close and some room mics, blend all the tracks in. So if we listen to it without it, let's just start with it dry. Here's the original guitars. So again, it opens
it sounded
out.
like a heart song as soon as we. It's just
Yeah.
crazy on you. I heard
Just that rhythm coming in.
it sounded great.
Yeah.
So
it
clean
just-
sounding.
It is clean too. It puts you into this whole different place when you add it all on and you actually you put the plug-in on, and it's like, whoa, it transports you. It's so crazy.
Those room mics, they just sort of roll off the top in a really musical sort of way, and it goes from, we recorded those, in your little home office, the Taylor and the Breedlove, tiny little room, mic kind of right up on it, really dry, and you heard the dry thing, but then when you open this up, all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, this is, these are big.
Booming, yeah.
So then we can also use it to do effects. So one of the other effects that was commonly used at Sound City and in records from this era in general was the use of Dolby A units. So Dolby A was a noise reduction system used with tape to reduce tape hiss. So the idea was you would encode the signal and then decode it to remove the hiss. Well, what they would use, like Keith Olsen at Sound City, would encode the signal but then not decode it, and it sort of gives it sort of an exciter kind of feel. So if we kind of listen to this, and I'll engage the exciter here. so you get that. I mean, on encode mode, you can basically see how hard do you want to hit it, wet, dry mix, how much of it do you want to blend in, and a couple of different sidechain options. But it's a cool effect.
Yeah, you can get exactly what you want. What
You
you're
can get
looking
those
for.
chimey kind of, acoustic guitar
Yep.
kind of sounds and just
Well,
blend
you're
that
getting,
back in.
because I feel like when we're recording it, like, and you try to get it as dry as possible, it can be on the super high end, almost tinny sounding sometimes. So something like this can be really important just because you want it to sound beefy.
Right.
And low end.
And in this case, I'm in reverb mode.
Yeah.
And I'm just blending it back in against the track. So it's just a touch of it, you know, and it just kind of gives it that, like I said, that little chiminess, and you can kind of dial it to your taste,
Yeah, exactly.
So let's jump to your lead vocal track here. When you go to, the sound city, like you have the different modes, remic and reverb, then you have the sources. So, we've shown some different sources for drums, acoustic guitar, the speaker PA. There's actually cabinets in there where you can recab electric guitars, things like that. But in vocal, when you go to vocal solo, you'll notice you have two different close mics, a close 1, close 2. So you can have two different mics that you can, blend together, or you can choose from 4 different mics. All right, so let's take a listen to the tracks. We'll start with it dry, and then we'll play the C12 and C414. Then we'll stop and go back and hear the other two, just the close mics.
Take a run on the track, hear the beating echoes of the impact. Record timing with a steady pace.
All right, let's now listen to these two. We'll start with the U67.
Take a run on the track, hear the beating echoes of the impact.
So what's cool here is you have, very different sounding mics, and you can kind of find the one that suits your voice, or maybe you could blend two together. So like for this, we could have the open, airy quality of the C12, which I think suits your voice really nicely, but maybe that lower mid from the 77DX ribbon mic and blend it in. So if we kind of go to our mixer mode here, we'll turn the two on.
Take a run on the track, hear the beating echoes of the impact. Record timing with a steady pace. Raise the bar in the first place.
And then we could add this room mic as well. So like I've got KM84s back in the room, back in the back here, and we'll listen to those as well.
Take a run on the track, hear the beating echoes of the impact. Record timing with a steady pace. Raise the bar in the first place.
Again, blend that into taste.
So
now
cool.
you found like it's not this little room, but you recorded in a nice big.
Yeah, exactly. And we recorded with the 2 different mics, right? And which ones were those?
The one at the end that we ended up using was the SC1.
Okay. I mean, so it's cool to think that like you're recording into this one mic.
Right.
But then when you go into the system and this program, like you can have multiple choices of what mic you want.
Yep.
And that, like, the diversity of having that too, like which mic is going to fit your voice best? Because I mean, as a vocalist, like there are certain mics where I'm like, no, I don't like that one. I don't think it works with my vocals. And then there's going to be one that you're like, yes, that's the one. So yeah, I feel like there's great options here, and you get to choose.
Yeah.
And what works.
When you get to choose from mics that most of us could never afford to buy.
I know, exactly. Like, how do you
mean?
get your hands
Especially
on
old
these?
vintage ones, so
Yeah.
like $10,000, $20,000 a piece, and you get some really authentic sounding versions of those mics to use.
It is authentic
in
too.
your songs.
Yeah.
Some of these mics are my age, so. So then we can add effects as well. So there's another use of a Dolby A unit, like we talked about before, but this, we found a modified version. So we got access to a lot of gear that Sound City had, and we were able to take these Dolby A units and open it up and say, hey, what's going on here? What are they doing? How are they using it? And we had, documentation and track sheets and notes and all this stuff. And we found this one that was basically set up as a multi-band compressor. So it's a 4-band compressor set at a 4-to-1 ratio. And again, you can just choose how hard you're going to hit it and the wet dry, and you can side chain it and have some filters and things. And let's just listen to that.
Take a run on the track, hear the beating echoes of the impact. Record timing with a steady pace. Raise the bar in the first place.
That's compressing pretty hard. But it's pretty transparent, but it kind of works really nicely in this.
Yeah, and you can go deeper into it. That's what I like too, is like you get like just a surface level sound and be like, I'm satisfied with that.
Yep.
But if you're wanting more and you're wanting to do more, you can get into more technical stuff.
You can spend a lot of time playing around in this plugin for sure.
And that's great. That's great for, I mean, it's probably like, hey, here's this program, like you can know not a lot of stuff and still get a great sound, or you can go like do a deep dive into everything and be super knowledgeable. So I feel like it's fitting for both.
It's pretty cool because if you're coming in and you don't have a lot of experience with this, the presets will get you. You can audition, find presets. Oh, I like this a lot, and then maybe tweak from there and get into that. And if you're paying attention to what you're doing and what's different, you're going to learn a lot.
Oh yeah, and I feel like this
process.
is super user friendly too.
Yeah. We've been working in Remic where we're entirely replacing that mic with these mics. But maybe we say, look, let's just blend in a little bit of that. So we could go over here to reverb mode. And if we go back to the mixer, now we could kind of have like a little wet dry and blend the affected signal against the original. Let's start with it bypassed.
Take a run on the track, hear the beating echoes of the impact. Record timing with a steady pace, raise the bar in the first place.
So it's a little bit more subtle, and maybe that's the sound you're going for. Maybe it's a little more natural sounding. I kind of like that a lot myself.
Yeah, it's just enough,
Yeah. So then the last thing I'll show here is you could add the chamber. So there is a chamber at Sound City, set between the old, control room A and control room B, and they could pump signals into this thing, and there was a speaker and microphones, and then, blend it back in. So you can choose different microphones in the room. You can choose different decay times or placements of the mics and speakers in the room. You got a width control and some pre-delay.
Take a run on the track, hear the beating echoes of the impact. Record timing with a steady pace, raise the bar in the first place. Let them know what's on your mind. No minor detail.
So that becomes really nice in the mix as well.
Yeah.
So let's switch over and look at the backing vocals and jump out here to a chorus and listen to these backing vocals. So we layered a bunch of different parts, or we had different parts and brought them in here. So again, let's just listen to this little section without anything going on.
Let them know what's on your mind.
So first thing you notice is it just widens out. Let the room kind of whatever, just it opens up. And what we've got a C24, actually an Omni, up close, as if there's like multiple Marnets behind these music stands right here. And then back in the back of the room, we've got U67s that are here, and then we've got KM84s. And one of the tricks that we learned from talking to Sound City engineers, that they would take KM84s, put them back in the room, aim them at the walls. So this would be a sound and blend it back in. So if I kind of mute these things and you can kind of hear what they all do. Let's take a listen. We'll start with it bypass, and then we'll just listen to close mic and add the others in here as well.
Let them know what's on your mind. No minor detail left behind.
You can hear how those room mics
really opens it up a lot.
Yeah.
So then if you look at effects, there's another effect here called air. And this is another creative use of a Dolby A unit. And there's 4 frequency band cards in these units. And one of the tricks that was commonly used in this era was to remove the 2 lower frequency bands, so you just had the mid and top bands. And it creates this excited, bright thing. And this is a Keith Olsen trick. It was also used by engineers like Roy Thomas Baker and Mutt Lange and guys that made records that I certainly grew up listening to. So we'll engage that.
Let them know what's on your mind. No minor detail left behind. Set your tune and keep in time. Creativity
again, you just blend that in to taste, or we could go over to reverb mode and have it use it as a wet-dry effect and just blend it back in here as well.
Let 'em know what's on your mind. No minor detail left behind.
Or let's listen to it with the lead vocal.
Let 'em know what's on your mind.
So that really sounds pretty to me.
Yeah.
right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah.
And when you get to blend it all and make it all work and collaborate well, it's gold.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Gold records, maybe even
Well, yeah.
platinum. I don't know.
That's what we're going for, right?
Exactly, exactly. You know, something to hang on the wall. But, you know, the idea is you can apply this to any and all tracks, different things, blend a little in. It can replace your tracks entirely. You can blend in just a little bit.
Yep.
You find the right combination of magic of all this. And it's another tool that you can use to
Yeah.
again, record at home, but
In
emulate
a tiny
space.
room
Yeah.
with all this background noise, right?
Right.
And I feel like there's so many people who have that kind of situation. We don't all have access to these really well soundproofed studios, right? And so a lot of times I see a lot of people like recording in their makeshift studio in a closet, you know?
Yep.
And so, yeah, you're gonna have all this background noise. Just trying to get that track as dry as possible, because then you can put it into this and it's gonna sound great.
So if we listen to like just these two tracks, so this is,
Let 'em know what's on your mind. No minor detail left behind.
so we go from 3 Marnays in your little home office
Yep.
to 3 Marnays that sound like they're in this big giant room, and it
But
sounds beautiful and musical and
Yeah, and but you can you really separated it out, and you can hear that. Like it just went to these 3 vocals kind of like almost combating each other.
Right.
You know, and then you ran it then through the plugin, and then it brings so much diversity between the tracks, and it balanced it, which then I'm like, okay, that's what I want it to sound like.
And I just love it. It widens it. You're right.
Yep.
It just kind of balances everything, and it sounds very natural.
Yes.
And then it's like, oh, that, you know.
That's what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a listen to all the tracks, everything we've just done here, and we'll start with it off, and then we'll engage Sound City and listen to a bit of it.
It'll be like bathing in gold once it's found. Appetite craving for the sound. A revelation that will set you free once you take that step into the city.
There you go.
So awesome. Those fills are so killer. I just love them.
It's amazing how the song came to life with real drums versus a little
Oh, yeah.
drum loop. It's like, oh man.
It sounded good, you know? I think how it all
Yeah.
came together.
I think we made a really cool song.
Yeah, I think we did too.
I think you wrote a great song, and
Thank
it's coming together quite nicely. And I think
Yeah.
we should make a whole record.
I agree.
I'll bring the gear. We'll engineer it.
Yes,
do
okay. All right.
Well, I hope you guys have as much fun using this plugin as I have here.
It's always been a collaborative space. We've always had starving artists, including Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, hanging around, hoping for their next shot. And people walking across the parking lot, you know, getting somebody to, you know, play on their album, you know, and collaborate. And even to this day, we have mixing, mastering, we have a Foley stage, and now Matt Wallace and Will Kennedy have an Atmos studio here on the property. So, you know, Sound City is an idea of excellence and collaboration, and it still is to this day.
You know, as a kid, one of my favorite records, the one I think I burned up 3 copies of it, was Tom Petty's Damn the Torpedoes. So the first time I came out here and I learned, oh, this is the room where they recorded one of my favorite records of all time. It's like, wow, to stand in that space and just to feel that was really cool. Now the idea with a recording I would do, or a recording that you can do in your own home studio, and to capture the sound, the magic of classic records. For me, Damn the Torpedoes is just such an amazing record. For you, maybe it's Nevermind, or Rage Against the Machine, or Fleetwood Mac, or any of the hundreds of gold and platinum records, the records you've grown up listening to on the radio that you've probably heard your entire life. To be able to capture that in your home is really cool.